Good morning. I am going to start by doing a little storytelling, and I hope to entertain you as well as make sure you learn something and some actionable things that you can take back to your company. So I'm Molly Q. Ford. I'm the Senior Director of Global Equality Programs at Salesforce. I've been at Salesforce nearly 7 years, and I was one of those employees that many of you might have, that busybody employee whose day job is one thing, but they're over here doing something else. And so it was really important to me when I walked in rooms that I saw people who looked like me. Because I would walk into a room in a meeting and tense up and go, oh, will there be an ally in the room? Will someone identify with me? Will someone understand me? Will someone amplify my voice? And that was something that was super important to me. And so I started to do the work in terms of how do we bring those voices to life? How is everyone heard? So I'm going to tell you a little story. It's pretty entertaining. I want to talk to you about when women started coding. And I want to give the credit here. This all goes to NPR. NPR did this awesome podcast where they said, what happened to all the women coders? So look at this picture. This is Bell Labs, 1967 in Oakland, California. And this is what a coder used to look like. It reminds you of that movie Hidden Figures, right? You see their glasses, you see their fashion, and more importantly, you see that hardware. And coding was originally woman's work. It was a woman's job because coders were typists. And so that was women's work. And we had folks in our industry like Admirable Grace Hopper, folks that really rose up. And so NPR started to say, look at this research here. Women are coming out of the homes in the 50s and 60s, getting degrees, going to college. And you see they're actually going into computer science, physical science, and law school. And then in the 80s, there's this drop-off. And this NPR podcast follows the journey of a couple of women. And one woman says, well, when I went to college, the professor said, you don't belong here. You can't keep up with the boys. And she said, I couldn't keep up with the boys. The boys showed up to school knowing how to code. They showed up to school being familiar with computers. So this woman in her journey actually walks away from computing, goes into another field, and then only to come back to tech and say, why was I scared away in the first place? And so let's all take a moment to blame those marketers in the room. So they started to look at how computers were marketed into the home. Do we put computers on the pink aisle next to Barbie, or is it on the blue aisle? And it was decided that computers would be on the blue aisle and used as a vehicle for video games. So think about my own company. I come from Salesforce. My CEO, Mark Benioff, is selling his first Atari video game at 15 years old, right? Think of the digital divide, that gap that provides. My own household, Christmas 1983, my brother got a Commodore that we plugged up to a black and white 13-inch TV. I got a record player with one record. It was Lionel Richie All Night Long. Right. I got one record, so I played it all night long, right? See what I did there? But going back to this, you see this and you say, wow, there's a gap there. That boys have computers in the home, they're exposed to a computer, they're learning to code, and they're being targeted and marketed to. And girls losing interest. We weren't talking to girls. And so there's a digital divide there, there's a gap. So then I bring you to Salesforce, right? This is our publicly available equality, diversity, data, and stats. In full transparency, we publish this annually at salesforce.com/equality. And notice, gender, a global metric, race and ethnicity, a US metric, 30.9% women. And a year ago, that number was 30.1% women. But that 0.8 of a movement is actually a celebration point for me at Salesforce, because that 0.8 of a movement, because of our exponential global growth, 2,000 more women walked through the doors of Salesforce in 1 year. And that's still a celebration point, but I never broke past 30.9 or 30%. So what we need to do in the tech industry is make sure that we're building more inclusion. There is an age of equality that we're driving towards, and we all have a role to play on this path. And though Salesforce, we're not perfect, and we're not always going to get it right, we're trying. And we're asking you all to come on this journey with us. So one of the things we very much do as a company is at the beginning of our fiscal year, we outline what are our values. And make no mistake, equality is a core value for Salesforce. So that means our employees, our customers, if you're part of our ecosystem, our Ohana, we have a North Star. And we know that equality is important because businesses can be a platform for change. Businesses have an opportunity to change the world. So what does that mean? Let me drive you through our practices. So the first is equal opportunity. And that's where we strive to build a more diverse sales force, where we mirror the communities that we're in, and also we remove those barriers for advancement. So we look at our own internal practices and processes and figure out how do we take down those barriers for people of color and women. Next is equal rights. So Salesforce is a San Francisco company, proud to be a best place to work in Canada as well as in the US. But we also said, we bought this company in Indianapolis, Indiana. And there was some discriminatory legislation that was coming up. And we felt the need to stand up against this legislation because we could not, in good conscience, send our customers, employees to a location where we knew they could legally be discriminated against. So today, I'm not selling you a cake because our values don't align. But then tomorrow, that turns into people with brown eyes can't come in here, or people with dreadlocks won't be served in my restaurant. So the company felt a need to stand up. And the real heroicism that happens starts with our employees. They raised their hand and said, there's a list of companies here that are not standing for this discriminatory legislation. Salesforce, where's your voice? Right? And raising issues that impact their community. The next thing is equal pay. And we don't talk about equal pay because we're proud we had a gap. There's no yay, it's equal pay day. Right? There's no celebration. There'll be no Hallmark greeting card for that. But what we had here was two women that said, we think something's not right here. And we cannot doubt women's spidey sense intuition that happens. And two women leaders, Layla Seika and Cindy Robbins, came to Mark Benioff and said, hey, we think there's something going on here, and we'd like to look into it. And keep in mind, Cindy's our chief people officer, but really, her and Layla are college buddies. You see that partnership there that women tend to have? How we bring other women along, how we get together and go, I'm not feeling this, you're not feeling this? Okay, yeah, we should say something. And so they got together and went to Mark Benioff and said, we think there's a problem. And notice this data-driven approach. Mark said, okay, bring me the data. It's not just a gut feeling, bring me the data. And more importantly, as a company, we knew we cannot do the research, and if there's a gap, like close the hood and go, what? Squirrel. You know, you can't just act like that didn't happen, right? So that was one of the things we noticed. So we did an equal pay audit and assessment. We've done it for 3 years. We've paid out nearly $600 million in salaries to balance that. Both men and women were impacted. We also did the audit by race. Less than 6% employees were impacted by this, but also no one gets a pay cut, right? No one gets a pay cut. And so really, we're trying to make sure there are no unexplained statistical differences in pay between a man and a woman. I'll let you clap there because we need equal pay. And last but not least, equal education. So we're a small and mighty equality team. We need all of Salesforce behind us. So we have a Salesforce Foundation, and that's where we're enabling our employees to be out in their communities, volunteering, spending their time. So equal education is where we're giving money to public schools. In a very simplified way, the principal's discretionary fund. It's a fund that Salesforce will put together for a principal of a public education school and say, what do you need for your school? Whether that means you need kids coding, you need graffiti to be painted over, or you need a garden planted. What can we do to help out with your school? So I want to bring it down to more practical terms because we all can't walk into Mark Benioff's office and go, I need a pay audit, right? So what can we do as individuals? So one of the things we're doing at Salesforce is financially empowering and supporting employee resource groups. We call them Ohana groups, right? Ohana groups, the Hawaiian term for family. That's your chosen family, people that you choose to be responsible for. We have 10 financially empowered Ohana groups. And notice I keep saying financially empowered, right? It's one thing to want to go out to get in a pride parade, right? It costs money to enter, to go to the pride parade, get the t-shirts. It costs money to have a women's lunch. It costs money to show up to a women's conference. right? So we're very clear that we want our Ohana groups out there. Most of them self-explanatory. Outforce, LGBTQ, employees and their allies, Salesforce Women's Network, right? Different groups that are out there. So what's the function of an Ohana group or employee resource group? We're very clear that we are not sponsoring just happy hour. If you want to get together with your girls and go to happy hour, that's on you. But what we're asking them to do is the first thing is inclusion, right? Provide that network. If you're LGBTQ and you want to talk about coming out at work and what does that mean? How do you have that conversation? Find your network within Outforce. If you're a mom, you're a new mom and you're saying, I'm trying to figure this out, this workload, which daycare center might be the best? Salesforce Women's Network has a parenting group within it. Go find your network there. The second thing is philanthropy. Salesforce employees receive 56 hours a year to be out volunteering in their community. So whether that means you're going to be a Girl Scout troop leader, you're coaching, you want to work at the soup kitchen, you have time. But specifically for our Ohana groups, we told them, go find something to coalesce around as a group. Spend your time, spend your effort. So I'll go back to this Girl Scouts example. So Salesforce Women's Network, if you're technical, you're using your pro bono hours to build the network, the CRM system for Girl Scouts, and how we can sell cookies online all year round. That's our wish, right? And then the second thing, it's volunteering as a troop leader, using those hours to volunteer, or collecting clothes, or whatever it is that you're passionate about. Some of our other Ohana groups, like Latino Force, in the US, basically for our Latinx employees and their allies, they've actually adopted an underserved school. So they're saying, do we show up in code with the kids? What are we doing to help these kids? They're also doing a coat drive with the kids. The last one is professional development. That means taking resources like this, conversations like Move the Dial, and having them inside Salesforce. And that's what we're trying to do. And please don't think there were great heroics that started these Ohana groups, right? These were started by LGBTQ folks that were getting together for happy hour. These were started by women that were saying, okay, what do we do? Same thing for Bold Force. It was a group of Black employees getting together saying, how do we talk about our identity at work? What does this mean? And it evolves from happy hour or lunch to, hey, let's be a formal group. So you as leaders and managers, we need to support these sorts of activities that happen within our company. But make no mistake, if you did not see a group in that 10 groups of employee resource groups that you can identify with, if you did not see yourself reflected, or you find yourself being a cisgender white male, I have a role for you. No one's off the hook. I'm asking you to stand up as an ally. Stand up as an ally for one another. I feel it's my responsibility to stand as an ally for LGBTQ folks. I feel that responsibility. And at Salesforce, we say that allyship has 4 actionable steps. The first step, to ask. Ask someone about their journey. Where'd you grow up? What company did you come from? Look for those similarities. Listen with empathy. As we embark on the holidays and everyone's sitting around the table and wanting to have these heavy political debates, we must listen with empathy and respect. Show up. Last week we had Diwali celebration, the South Asian culture's Indian Spring Festival, and they said, who'd like to sign up to wear a sari? Right? And you show up and there's an amazing food and beautiful scenery and your coworkers are in these beautiful saris, and more importantly, there's a little blonde girl in a hoodie checking you in at the front desk because she's showing up. That's her way of showing up. And I tell folks, if you come to Bold Force, our employee resource group for Black employees, if you come to their meeting or their event, you won't be the only person who's not Black in that room. But there's that responsibility to show up. And the last one, speak up. Speak up sounds super easy, but we all know it's really not. So when there's a crude joke, the blonde joke, or you hear that a woman's voice is not being amplified, she says something and everybody in the room keeps talking and talks right over her, and then a man raises the same point and everybody goes, yep, that's right, Bob, that was great, right? What are we doing to amplify her voice? What are we doing to say, I think someone has something to say at the table that isn't being heard? This day and age of a hashtag Me Too movement, what are we doing to make sure we're speaking up and amplifying the voices of those that may not have that privilege? I want to talk to you about allyship and bring it to life. This happens to be a picture of our Bold Force leadership team, and they're at San Francisco's Martin Luther King Jr. parade. So the first year they showed up in 2017 and marched, almost 100 people showed up, right? Because folks weren't sure, am I welcome at Bold Force meetings, Bold Force events? What does that look like? And then we started to talk about allyship and what that meant. And when we say show up, in 2018, Salesforce had over 1,700 people get out and take to the streets marching for MLK Jr. And you can see from this photo, they're not all black people, right? It's about showing up. There's a principle you can get behind and understand in terms of MLK Jr. We also have another example. This is from our Hyderabad office. We had 2 partners locally in India call us up and say, we want to sponsor the local Pride Parade. We'd like Salesforce to be out there with us. So we showed up. And we got a call from one of our HR business partners that said, sorry, we got one little problem. We're going to sponsor the Pride Parade in India. We're going to march in the Pride Parade in India. We don't have any gay employees in India. But we said, that's not the point. That's absolutely not the point, right? We're showing up as allies. So we come to India, we have a celebration, everyone has their shirts on, we're going to take to the streets and march, and there's a town hall, and one person stands up and says, I actually am gay, but I've never said those words before. Because it's really about building that inclusive company culture, building that network of allies. Because think of that fakeness that people have to wear when they're in the closet, when they're hiding, when you're struggling as a parent and you're trying to come to work and put on a brave face. We really need company cultures where we can be our authentic selves. I want to talk to you about another thing that you can do. One of the things we do is training, right? We didn't just wake up knowing how to do all this, how to have the vocabulary, how to have the language to do this. So we focus on training. So Salesforce has an online learning training platform. It's free, called Trailhead. I'm not selling you Trailhead. I'm telling you a story. So Trailhead, we train our customers there. You can say, I'm running CRM for a financial services organization. What does that look like? And you go to trailhead.com and you take that training. So one of the things we wanted to do as the Office of Equality is take those things that our customers, employees are used to and use them as platforms for driving equality. So therefore, I put my training up there. And take note that we very purposely launched our first Trailhead, the business value of equality. We've all seen that stat, that companies that are more racially and gender diverse have an opportunity to outperform their competitors by over 35%. So we basically did that, put our training there, unconscious bias training. We train employees 2 different ways. You can take the free, publicly available online Trailhead training, but we also do unconscious bias training for people managers in a classroom and give them a toolkit to take back to their teams. The other thing I want to say is these are gamified, snackable, I like to say, quick 10, 15-minute vignettes. They're fun, there's quizzes, there's videos, and that's how we're training our employees. So we're having these powerful conversations, teaching the language that's necessary. I'm going to dig into a couple of these with you, just to give you a little flavor of what we mean. So these are 5 inclusive hiring principles. So as I said, Salesforce is the best place to work in Canada. It's the best place to work for women, number 9. And a best place to work in San Francisco. But one of the things we really focus on is our company culture. And I got a little tidbit for you. When you say culture fit, don't say that anymore. That's the new racism, right? Let's leave that language behind. It's about culture add-on. What can this person bring to the table that other candidates may not, or any holes we may have on our team? Culture add-on. But notice the first principle. We seek to hire the most qualified candidate for the job. So for diversity and inclusion or equality, I've never asked you to lower the bar or change your standards. But the second bullet, I am asking you to go find a more diverse pool. And it's not enough to just go apple, apple, orange. We threw a woman in there. There was a woman. No, I'm asking you to do apple, apple, orange, pineapple. Go find someone who has a different background, maybe from a different industry. If you all went to the same school, go find someone from a different school. And what you want to do is make sure there's an equitable hiring process, but you've made the slates more diverse. So hear me again. I'm not asking you to change your standards or dumb anything down. I'm asking you to take the effort to go look for a more diverse candidate pool. And another thing, when that woman or person of color does show up for an interview, can you make sure they see a woman or person of color in their interview process? Can you please make sure that happens? You want to sit across the table and know that there's diversity, someone you can identify. Remember, I started with, I'm one of those people that walked in the room and said, is anyone going to look like me? Is anyone going to identify with me? And if you've never had that thought, then that, my friends, is called privilege, and you're lucky to have it, right? And don't get me wrong, I'm not blaming the men, of course, because I'm sure a lot of dudes this morning said, am I going to be the only one up in here? Right? A lot of men said, right? And let's be clear, we need men to be our allies. The numbers, men are the leaders, they're the managers. They can help influence this change, right? This is a journey together. So there's no man hating going on here, right? I always tell folks, if you are surrounded by a company of men, go make them your mentors. Everyone wants to lean in. We have to give them the tools to be able to help them. 5 inclusive leadership principles. This is another conversation we're having at Salesforce. And notice that last one, celebrate and bond with everyone in mind. That means every celebration for the team can't be at the bar at 6:30, right? We alienate those that are parents and may need to pick up a kid. We alienate those that just don't want to drink or be in that atmosphere. On my team, we are like king and queen of the ice cream social. And we also have sorbet, right? So lactose intolerant, we're inclusive, right? Right? It's about making sure everyone can show up. We lead with equality. We have brave, authentic conversations, right? And we're fair, or at least trying to be fair, in assignments and promotions. So I hope I've given you some tools that you can take back and use. We really want to talk about talent development. How are you investing in your women talent? And I like to say, taking it beyond career mentoring to sponsorship. And let's really focus on, mentoring is great when you can sit and have a coffee with someone, right? But what you really need are folks in your organization that can advocate for you when you're not in the room. Who's speaking to your great work? Another role men can play. Are you making sure that the opportunities and assignments are being fair and that there's not an opportunity to go, you know what, I could show up and speak at that conference as a dude, but maybe I should ask one of the ladies on my team, someone who's qualified, right? And seeing if there's an opportunity for them. Next is be an ally. There's a role in allyship that we can all play for each other, right? And I ask women, be allies for one another, especially be an ally for a woman of color. And the last, equal pay audit. And again, I know that's not accessible for most of us, right? But it's a conversation that we need to keep having about pay equity. I want to leave you with a video. This is a video from our Salesforce employees that really talks about allyship in terms of what it means to them. So I hope you enjoy it.
Can you tell just by looking at me?
Can you tell just by looking at me?
So can you tell by looking at me that I'm an Iraq War vet?
Would you guess that I am a pro bodybuilder?
I'm an avid college basketball fan.
I love Bruce Lee films.
I am half redneck.
I used to be a chubby kid.
Would you have guessed that I'm a swimmer?
That I'm Catholic.
I did not learn how to speak English until I was in 2nd grade.
Just by looking at me, you wouldn't know that I was the first in my immediate family to graduate high school.
So would you guess that I'm undocumented and then that I got a degree from Haas Business School?
Would you assume?
What many people assume is that I'm happy, but many people don't realize that I'm scared.
I'm afraid of being misunderstood.
We're all afraid of something. We're all insecure about something.
Yeah, I wake up every day with the fear of deportation.
Lots of us are just afraid of what we don't know.
Don't assume, ask what you don't know.
You don't know about Islam? Ask me questions. Won't offend me.
And if you ask me, I'm Filipino.
I'm Apache and Comanche.
I'm very much proud of my spirituality.
I am a she.
I am a he.
I'm straight. I'm a lesbian.
I am a husband. I am trans.
I am a 3-time cancer survivor.
I'm Mexican Chinese. I'm gay.
I am a proud Muslim.
I am an ally.
I am an ally.
Not only am I an ally, I'm a champion.
My truth does not have to be someone else's truth, but they are still true.
So we're asking you to tell us who you are.
Be seen and be recognized.
Be part of a more diverse and more inclusive culture.
Help us move forward together.
Because together, we are Salesforce.
Juntos somos Salesforce.
We are Ohana.
And Salesforce welcomes all.
Can I hug you? Okay.
I'd love to end by saying thank you all for this opportunity and have an amazing day.